welcome to another edition of Rise and Shine. Well, we got a very interesting topic today for you that you have to stay tuned for. We're going to be talking about gentrification. And many of you have heard of that, and some of you on one side of the fence, and some may be on the other. But we're going to kind of explain to our listening public there about gentrification. And we'll be right back to get it on right after this commercial.
Mr. Buckley, how you doing today?
Doing great, Dr. Gordon. How are you, sir?
Great, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate you treating with the Alabama Injury and Pain Clinic. What was your favorite thing?
Well, first of all, no out-of-pocket expense, and my back has gotten great.
This is great. You know, a lot of our patients worry about who's going to pay their bill. So it's good to know that the insurance company will pay after your case is settled. No out-of-pocket expenses. Call 476-PAIN. The choice is yours.
Tax time is here. Tax time is here. Income tax time is here again. Let us save you hundreds of dollars on your preparation fees that others charge you. Come in from January the 2nd to January the 15th and save an additional 10% on our already low prices. Remember, H&H works harder for you. H&H will be there for you. Call us at 438-1620. All right, welcome back to Rise and Shine. We're going to start this show off with a brief word of inspiration. And Mr. Battle, would you lead us into that inspiration?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for another opportunity just to wake up today. We trust your judgment in providing us with the knowledge and the wisdom that we could do your will. We want most of the individuals to listen this morning to think about the reason for the season, so that we could be loving and do the things that you would like for us to do. In the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. All right, well, we're talking about gentrification, and I just want to start off with a brief definition so we'll all be on the same page of what is gentrification. I want to read this. It says, gentrification is a phenomenon that is occurring in schemes all over Scotland, and it's all over the world right now, especially here in America we are experiencing. It is a word that has been used for many centuries, but was brought into force in the early 60s by a sociologist who observed how the middle class people are moving into traditional working class areas, often displaced the very poor. So we talk about one class of people moving in and moving out another class. Regardless of the opinion, it's always been significant a change in the makeup of the local community. When low-income housing is either demolished or refurbished, and the wealthier people begin to move into the neighborhood, usually what occurs, at least in the scheme, is that the poor income families and problem ones are relocated to make way for the middle, sometimes the educated or the upper class. There are often widespread building and community regeneration of shops, businesses, parks. All of the above is happening and has happened in different places, in different communities. I'm sure many of you can relate to what we're saying, and we're going to talk a little bit about even locally how gentrification is happening right here under our noses. So, Mr. Battles, I know this is a subject of yours. You'd like to tell us a little bit about your opinion on gentrification.
My opinion on gentrification is to really express to our listeners, audience here this morning, about what impact will gentrification have on you and on our communities. When we look at gentrification, we have to also take an assessment the impact on the relocation of the middle class into traditional poor areas. What does it do with the impact of crime and violence, and how does it affect our educational process with the relocation, and sometimes, like in the case in my community, the closing of public schools? But more importantly, though, we want to address this from an issue not about race, but about the quality of life between the displacement of poor people in general, and what significant impact does it have And Dr. Gordon going to give us a little implication about why do he think that it really is something that we have to be concerned about, so that we can disseminate information to you, the general public, so that you understand the phenomenon of gentrification.
Yes, good morning, everyone. When we did the bus routes for the city of Pritchard, we took folks all across the city to work at jobs. Many worked in the restaurant industry, some worked in other industries. Many elderly were going to visit family members around the way. When folks live inside the city, when they got everything there. You got services in the city, you got schools in the city, so you got things to service folks right there. They can in walking distance, if you would. As Mr. Battles was saying, the schools are walking distance. Many of the stores are walking distance. So if you take a poor or lower income person and move them out into the suburb and move them out into an area away from these services, and they don't have, say, transportation, then you sort of handicap that person. They may lose their jobs, they lose their way of life, they have to sort of relearn everything all over. So for the sake of the dollar, or for the sake of, for some would say, to make the tax bracket or the tax value of that property go up, or increase the value of the tax for that property, because you put a new building on it, you ruin the life of the poor person who you moved out into the suburbs or to the country, and therefore you cause major disruption in their life. As far as for the person with means, I guess it's just a benefit for them. They usually buy the property cheaper than what they would have bought property for in the suburbs. They usually are closer to maybe their work or whatnot, so maybe they get rid of their transportation even though they have means to buy transportation, and it ends up being a benefit for that person. Downtown Mobile, there's areas, is it the Oak Leaf District? What's the district downtown?
Oak Leaf Garden District.
There's you go one street over, you got houses that are not quite in the district yet.
Texas Street.
But then on the other side of the street, this property is $500,000, and on the other side of the street, this is $50,000 a property. But what'll happen is someone will go in and buy those $50,000 properties and put newer homes on them, and all of a sudden they become $500,000 properties. So one street at a time, or one side of the street at a time, you can see an area grow, a district, if you would, grow to a bigger district. And while you feel that growth is good for the city, you're displacing folks who's lived there for generations. Their family homestead. You push them out of the community for the sake of progress, and it's not progress to that family who loses their livelihood.
And that raises the question, Doc, is gentrification, is it good? And is it bad? We have to ask these questions, and usually, and we got a few things here that I just want to bring up here, because it's good for some, but it may be bad for others. And I'd just like to go through the good and bad that this article talks about for gentrification. It says first, good. If you own a home and your housing prices go up in the area, of course that's good, right? That's what we all want.
That's right.
But bad, if you don't own a home and you have to move out of a place you have lived in for generations to make way for developers, well, it appears that gentrification might be bad for you. It usually will make the poor poor because, like you said, Doc, they're in a place or area that things are convenient to them. But now when you got to catch a bus because you didn't have a car in the first place, when you got to catch a bus a longer distance to come to work, then that makes it bad.
Brother, let me interrupt you there. See, the problem with that is, in cities like Tokyo, New York, even Atlanta, the metro, the buses, and even they're putting up a monorail system in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And this monorail system is going to connect outskirts like Cartersville and cities that are 30 miles outside and 40 miles outside and 50 miles outside of Atlanta to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that luxury in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
once you get outside the city proper, the buses don't go there.
Buses don't go.
And you have to take a taxi.
Mhm.
And taxi it's not
Right.
feasible.
Mhm.
Then the sad thing I hear as a person when I volunteer at the bus services is that Medicaid pays for 12 rides a year, or 12 so many rides a year
Mhm.
to dialysis or to your doctors or wherever,
Mhm.
but you need 14, you need 16. So guess
Right.
what? You got to pay for a taxi
Right.
or get a family member or something. You got to scrape and scramble to get to your appointment. A person getting oxygen treatment for wound healing, a hyperbolic chamber, I forget what the proper name is.
That's right.
You put the leg in there, you put the body part in there that needs to have problem healing, and it helps to bring blood to the area to heal that part of the body. They recommend 60 treatments. Well, the insurance pays for 20.
Mhm.
And if you move that person outside the city, not only do you have to come up with thousands of dollars to pay for the other 40, but now you got to get transportation. So it's a major. I think the city needs to preserve a portion of the city for income, people who are lower income. That's the way. That's the only way to make this work. Is if you close your eyes to it and say, well, bringing in more expensive property structures, if you would, increasing the value of the property is good for the city. You forget the least of these,
Right.
and we end up pushing them, making them harder and harder for them to survive.
Mhm.
And when you take that into consideration, I think both of y'all are on point when we're talking about gentrification, because the significant impact that it has on the inner city. Let's just take, for example, just the public housing. With the public housing, with some of the areas on the inner city where the public housing, because of whatever reason, continues to close, then you have a movement of the population into areas where people who paid hundreds of millions of dollars for their homes. So you got another problem because you have a transference of the crime to those areas. You have citizens who live within those jurisdictions who are complaining about, well, I didn't have this before they moved this down there. So it causes a clash when I think that the whole American system was designed so that we could impact on the quality of life for all of its citizens. Let me give you one example. When you look at the disparity in the national studies that reflect the disparity between income gaps, it ain't about color. It's about rich and poor, because there are poor who are being impacted negatively about gentrification, but at the same time, though, we're causing a shift for the convenience of some, but to the detriment of others.
And that's why I just want to quickly kind of go through some of these here
Go ahead.
on this. But the good, it says, if you're a local business people, because we're going to look at it from different perspectives.
That's
If
right.
you're a local business person, then you see more business, then obviously that redevelopment is going to be good for you. If you're involved in the building industry, then of course you're going to sell more building
You're
supplies and more contractors and all of these things.
That's
Then
right.
you're going to look at it from a different perspective.
That's right.
If you've been plagued by people problem and drug problem, as you were saying, Robert,
That's right.
that you're going to be glad it's gone, because hey, you moved all the drug problems out of the area.
Into your
But
area.
into another area, as you
By
were saying.
Dr. Gordon.
It means that we bring in new middle class with them. If means that the new middle class bring in with them their individualism and personal materialism, then that's bad. If you are a church, and this is some of the movies that I have seen in the past is about this. Usually the church that is the last one they got to get, and usually comes through on the movie and save everything.
That's right.
But it said if you're a church that saw huge swaths of local children in their Sunday school, because see, we don't think about these things when we moving people out.
That's right.
If they go to church, then here's a church now that used to have maybe 100, 200 people there. Now you done moved half the congregation out and they can't get to church. So that's bad. But it's good if it's skilled and growing the work ethics that returns to the community. Well, of course, we all want that. The community is destroyed by those who move in as first-time buyers and have no communal interest other than securing a foot on a property ladder and moving up. So that makes it bad. Bad is those who would like to own their own home, but now they can't because the property value has gone up so high. One of the things I look at is because the big question is that you're going to get, or the big debate is whether or not this is progress, that this is movement, because that's what people say, okay, we need to destroy this area over here because of progress. But they don't take the human factors, and I think that's what we're missing a whole lot when we talk about gentrification, is the human being goes way low down on the scale. It should be number one in my opinion, but it's usually last.
I think one thing that may be beneficial to a city, you speak of crime and some of the other problems that a person, say crime or drugs or what have you, is if you have an area that's really condensed, and you got a lot of these problems, maybe dedensification, and I don't know if that's a proper word for it, but that may be
that's
a tool to use to minimize drug activity or criminal activity. So if you dedensify an area, but if you preserve an area for the low income, I think cities need to have public transportation. They need to have areas for the low income within walking distance of many amenities, because some people choose not to drive, but some people can't drive. If a person is mentally challenged, they may not be able to drive, but it'd be nice if they could live in a nice small apartment somewhere close to where they go to work or all the city services. And I think cities just need to be cognizant of that fact to keep something available for the income person, for the person with the income who can afford to live in the suburbs.
And you know, okay.
Well, let's take a break right here, Robert, and then we're going to come back and continue this topic here. We'll be right back after these brief commercials. Tax time is here. Tax time is here. Income tax time is here again. Let us save you hundreds of dollars on your preparation fees that others charge you. Come in from January the 2nd to January the 15th and save an additional 10% on our already low prices. Remember, H&H works harder for you. H&H will be there for you. Call us at 438-1620.
Millions of conversations will happen today, but there's one that few of us have had. A conversation about the care we want when we're seriously ill or nearing the end of life. Sharing your wishes with friends, family, and care providers now and as life changes may improve quality of life at the end of life, both for you and for the ones you love. This conversation may be difficult, but wouldn't you rather have it now, before a crisis? It's time to have the conversation. A message from the Institute of Medicine.
You had a wreck, you decide to wait to see if the pain will go away. It's been a week or two, the pain hasn't gone away. Quit procrastinating. Come and see me, chiropractor Dr. James Gordon at the Alabama Injury and Pain Clinic. Call me 24 hours a day at 476-PAIN. The choice is yours. No money needed. No appointment needed. What are you waiting for? Call 476-PAIN.
All right, welcome back to Rise and Shine, where we've been talking about gentrification. And now we want to take a look at our local area. We've defined it, we've talked about the good and the bad of it. Now let's look at what's happening here right at home. So you want to talk a little bit about what you see that's going on in the city of Mobile and around the area?
I do see a significant shift in the population. I do see a significant shift in the crime. But I also am cognizant of the fact that when we look at the state of Alabama, the governor is talking about building more prisons. Well, the impact of crime and violence on the state of Alabama, and so if you just say, just for, not to pick on public housing or low income, but you set guidelines to say, look, only the people who are registered on the roster can live within there, and no one who has a criminal record could move to that community. But do you think for 1 minute that if my son is in the penitentiary, I don't care what he charged with, if my son has committed a crime or violence or selling drugs, that if he get out, that I'm not going to let him come stay in my house and make sure he's in the street. So we have to look at the reality of what implications are really driving the force that causes the deterioration of the quality of life. The move of gentrification primarily is to focus on increasing the quality of life. So like Brother Hasib said earlier, do you increase the quality of life for some and decrease the quality of life and education for others?
Mm-hmm. And that's why I said that the human factor, I think, is left out a lot of times. We need to look at what effect that my action is going to have on others. And then can I keep them whole, at least in the same condition, or make their condition better? We shouldn't be making the condition worse. And a lot of times we only look at the project itself and we don't care what happened to the people that we move out. So I think we got to have a little bit more concern for the human being.
I guess we need to charge our leaders in the city, the state, and the federal government with being more compassionate.
Man,
we're having a problem with
right.
when it comes to our neighborhoods, like I said, public housing. Brother Battles hit the nail on the head where you put all these restrictions. Well, public housing should be made for the public. We can't protect the public from the public by saying, well, if you got this, this, or this, you can't live there. Mm-hmm. That's like trying to protect Chicago with gun control laws. It's one of the most murderous cities in the nation with gun violence, but yet they got the most strict gun laws. So we can't legislate morality. I think we would, back in the 60s, as Dr. King or President Kennedy, I think Dr. King was credited for that, or John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, but we can't legislate a person to do good, and therefore we can't legislate a community to be a certain makeup. You know, we get as a realtor and Hasib as a broker, you know, that's a major violation when you start trying to cherry pick where someone can live and can't live, but yet we allow our government to do that.
Right.
And that's totally unfair, and they should be brought up on the housing charges. And maybe that's something that'll change with the new housing director. I understand.
I hope so.
Well, you know, we talking about the subject of gentrification, but they got a word that's called de-densification,
That's
and
right.
we have seen some of that go. And I think we have come to a point in the life of American people, because you talk about Chicago, and that's a prime area, and I've been to Chicago many times. People in those areas that's called high crime areas, usually you go there, you got these high-rise apartments that they're stacking people on top of each other. Yeah. And I mean, to me, it's obvious that you know, if you get five people and stack them on top of each other, then you know the one on the bottom is really going to be crazy.
Well, we've been Birmingham to Mobile.
Birmingham, right?
Birmingham has a little projects with 5 or 10 stories maybe, but New York, I don't know. I'm sure New York's like Chicago. I've never been to Chicago, but New York has looked like 30 or 40 story apartment complex. There was a story called the PJs, I think done by Eddie Murphy many moons ago, and it had little cartoon characters, and it had in the Good Times. The Good Times really never showed outside the buildings like the PJs did, but you had 20 and 30 and 40 story project complex with 20 buildings together. Right. I guess when you that dense of folks who are poor,
right?
You're liable to have a high rate of something, you know. So that's the problem, I guess, in de-densification. But I think in Mobile, like you're saying, bringing it local, the de-densification, we really don't have that problem. Even our projects, we say we're going to close Roger Williams down and rebuild it. Where I go to Montgomery, there's projects right downtown by the Capitol, been there since the 50s, and they haven't been remodeled. We got Booker T. Washington School, walking distance from Roger Williams projects. And Booker T. Washington's been there since the 60s or 50s. It hasn't been rebuilt, but yet the projects that looks like it's been, you know, it looks like 70s building. It may have been a little earlier, but that was very. It seemed like those could have been remodeled, maybe de-densified if necessary. But I don't, you know, see where necessarily tearing them down was necessarily the best thing for the public interest. If you could have made them new again by gutting them and putting in new facilities inside there. I think that's where the housing board even challenged the city to. On that issue. It's been in the news that the city moved a little swiftly on displacing some of our residents, because once you move a lot of those folks out of Roger Williams and you put it back together, where are they now? Are they able to come back? or did you move them somewhere where they had access to the public transit?
That's right.
You know, so that's the problem when you
Right.
displace all these
And
folks.
I think
Brother Harsey, because of time, I just like to say that one of the main problems that I see, John Rousseau, the French philosopher, said the people get the kind of government that they deserve. And what he meant by that was that when we elect and select our leaders, our ministers, and our community people, we should be focusing on people who have an interest for the development of the community rather than popularity or because of somebody said we bought us some chicken and beans, to eat. But I think one of the most deteriorating things that has happened to the community of Mobile, especially as it relates to poor versus middle class, is that the political leadership has not really been visionary enough. When do they have community meetings to set up an agenda in the African American community alone just to talk about these things that we were talking about this morning, gentrification, and the impact that it has on the quality of life for our citizens who reside within the city?
But you know, Robert, as you say that I'm in the real estate business, so I do see things from that side. In every major city I know, and even the smaller cities, they have a plan for the city.
But they got a plan for Mobile.
They got a plan. They have a plan in Mobile.
Do we get one of those?
And if you
Do we get to get one of those pearl?
well, they have a plan that's I know when I was going down to the engineering department and all, they got what they call a 100-year plan.
They got a 100-year
They got a
plan.
100-year plan for the city of Mobile. Some of the stuff that's happening is not a surprise to me because 40 years ago I looked at it and that was part of the 100-year plan. So now that I'm in a time that plan is becoming a reality, taken off of the paper and now becoming a reality, I shouldn't be surprised.
You shouldn't be surprised, Brother Harsey, but what you should be surprised about is that that's where our political leaders come into. They are the people who we have selected and elected in order to provide us with the information that we need. Just take, for example, with the last election, there are so many people who had difficulty with dealing with the amendments that were on the election, on the process.
Well, I want to say that with that 100-year plan, also it's foolish to let someone 100 years ago dictate where you need to be today, because a lot of stuff, a lot of the electronics, a lot of the advances we made as a society, they didn't have a clue 100 years ago, so it's foolish to go off a 100-year-old plan. We need to have leaders, like Robert Battle said, that are progressive enough and strong enough in the mind to address the plans. That's the problem with the downtown Mobile. You need to have something down there that brings kids to the area, make kids want to come to the region. They bring families.
Get involved in your community. You should know what's going on, because if you don't plan or you don't help plan, then a plan is being made for you. So if you wanna do anything, if you wanna make any changes, if you wanna know what's happening, get involved. So I hope at least we gave you enough information about what's going on to want to get involved. So it's been great being with you on another great show of Rise and Shine, and we look forward to seeing you next week here on another great edition of Rise and Shine. See you then.